let's get into what I like to call Rax Reads Wrap. I read a total of 9 books this month, 2 romances, 3 thrillers, 1 historical fiction, 1 memoir, and 2 fiction. My average rating was a 4.1 out of 5 stars, so I deem that as a pretty successful reading month. The Goodreads average rating was at about 4.2 out of 5. As for my favorite book of the month and my least favorite book of the month, I will be revealing that at the end of this video. So let's get into the individual reviews. So one of the books I read this month was The Quiet Tenant by Clemence Michallon. She's a French author. I'd love to read some of her books in French. However, I did read this one in English this month. So this is a psychological thriller. It follows a woman who's been kidnapped by a serial killer. He holds her captive in this shed in his backyard for years. However, the killer has to move, and he actually brings the woman along with him and is forced to introduce her as a family friend to his daughter. I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars. Goodreads rated this a 3.82. I really liked the premise of this book. I feel like the storyline and the concept of the book is super interesting and it's very intriguing. I feel like I haven't seen that in a thriller before. However, I didn't love the writing style. I think the different point of views were a bit confusing, and I feel like we kept getting introduced to new point of views that weren't in the beginning of the story. So it felt a little off, which is why I gave it 4 stars. This serial killer was giving Ted Bundy a little bit. Like, he's very charming and nice to people, but then he has this dark, evil side that most people don't see. So I feel like I kept thinking about Ted Bundy while reading this, but overall would recommend to anyone that likes a psychological thriller. It was really good, cool concept. Really liked this author. Next up, I read Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This is a standalone, I would say, contemporary fiction/fiction. This story is about 3 sisters who reunite in New York after the death of their 4th sister. Each of these sisters is grappling with their own demons. A lot of the stories about grief and addiction, and you just follow the journey of these 3 sisters that already have a weird family dynamic and have also just lost one of their sisters. I rated this a 3.5 stars, and Goodreads rated this a 3.96. This is a classic case of don't judge a book by its cover, but like in the opposite connotation that we normally use. This cover is stunning. Stunning. I'm obsessed with it. However, the contents of this book fell short for me. Judging by the cover, I would think it's a better book than it was. If I saw my friend pick this book up in the bookstore, I wouldn't necessarily tell them to put it down, but I would never recommend it. Okay, I didn't want to put this book last, but next up is my 5-star read of the month. I loved this book. This might honestly be one of my favorite books of the year so far. Really loved it. And that is The Bookseller of Dachau. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a town in Germany, so not really sure the pronunciation, but I think it's The Bookseller of Dachau. I rated this book a 5 out of 5 stars, of course. Goodreads currently has this book at a 4.52. This is a dual timeline historical fiction that follows a woman that travels from the US to Germany after unexpectedly inheriting a bookstore in Germany. She also inherits a set of old letters written by her grandma, who she had never met before. As she reads these letters, she uncovers this secret history of her family and what they went through during World War II. Like I said, this story is dual timeline. So the first timeline is that woman who is going to Germany to figure out why she got left this bookstore and uncover some truth about her family's history. The other point of view is actually the letters that are being written and what her grandma went through during World War II and what she saw. I loved that it was dual point of view. I loved that it was modern day and World War II. I also feel like when there are multiple point of views, I really like books like that, but usually I like one point of view more than the other. In this case, I liked them both the same. I cared equally about both characters, which I found very neat. Also, the main character in modern day time is Grace, and I loved that we were following Grace's story and uncovering her grandma's story alongside with her. It felt a lot more personal. It also kind of felt like you were uncovering some sort of mystery. So I really loved that as we were reading the old letters, the main character, Grace, was also reading them at the same time. So I certainly will be looking up more books from Shari J. Ryan because I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Next up, I read The Inmate by Freida McFadden. This is a psychological thriller that follows a nurse that moves back to her hometown to work in a prison. What she soon finds out is that she actually knows one of the inmates and has had a past with him. That is all I'll say for this book. I feel like Freida books are really good to go into them blindly and not know much about it. So I will just leave it at that. I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars, and Goodreads has this at a 4.03. This is actually the 12th Freida McFadden book that I've read. However, I feel like we can all agree that not all of Freida McFadden's books are worth the read. So I usually have 3 tiers for Freida McFadden's books. The first tier is top tier Freida McFadden books. All thriller readers should read these books. The second tier is all Freida McFadden fans should read this book. If you like her writing, if you like her plot twists, then you'll probably like that middle tier. And then the last tier is you can probably skip it. So I think The Inmate is top tier. However, I did dock a star just because of the ending, and I won't give anything away, but usually Freida McFadden books have really big plot twists at the end, but they usually are pretty well-rounded and connect back to the beginning of the story. This one, I felt just a little bit lost. I feel like it wasn't really well-rounded at all. I am so bad at guessing plot twist. I also don't really want to guess plot twists. Like, I like reading and just enjoying it and not trying to guess what's going to happen. And I'm not good at it. With The Inmate, I didn't guess it. I didn't see it coming. But I also just didn't like the ending and the plot twist. Next up, we've got Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. A new release was coming this month by Abby Jimenez. So I wanted to finish the last book in this interconnected series. This is the third book after Part of Your World and Yours Truly. I highly recommend reading the first 2 before reading this one because it just makes the experience a lot better. This is a romance about 2 people who believe that they are cursed. Every time they date someone, they end up getting broken up with, and then their ex finds the love of their life right after. So both of these people have experienced this where they date people and then their exes find their happily ever after right after dating them. So they decide to date each other and see if they can break the curse just for the summer. Obviously, I already said this is a romance, so you kind of can guess where this would go. I gave this a 4.5 stars. I absolutely ate this up. Goodreads has this at a 4.37. This book was just such a full circle moment for me. I'm so glad I read the first 2 books first. I knew there was going to be some sort of crossover and we were going to see old characters, but I didn't think the crossover would run so deeply, and that just made everything hit harder. As all typical Abby Jimenez books, this is super cute, cheesy, very modern. It also tackles heavy topics. Usually I feel like Abby Jimenez tackles some sort of family dynamic issue, and that's what we saw in this book as well. It deals with things like grief and anxiety and just having a complicated family dynamics. I do appreciate that there's some lighthearted moments where you can actually laugh while you're reading this book. Next up, I read The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku. This is actually Eddie Jaku. This memoir is Eddie Jaku's account of his life being a Holocaust survivor. I read a lot of historical fiction, so it was nice to have kind of a change and read some sort of memoir biography of true things that happened in a true story. This book is not just about what he witnessed when he was in Auschwitz. It's also his life afterwards. A big lesson that you take away from this book is how to view life in a positive light after you've endured some of the most horrible things imaginable. His story is very inspiring. If you don't want to read the book, I would still strongly recommend that you listen to his TED Talk. I think it's under 10 minutes. I can link it in the video description, but if you don't have time to read this, I would encourage you to listen to his TED Talk. The next book I read is I Who Have Never Known Women by Jacqueline Harpman. I think this actually was also originally written in French and they translated it. This is fiction/dystopia. It's about a girl who grows up imprisoned underground with 39 women. She has never known what real life is. She doesn't know real human connection. She has no idea. All she knows is this cage with 39 women. And this story follows what happens when they escape. This is not a spoiler. It's on the back of the book. But it's a story about how they navigate this strange world that they are now in. I gave this 3 stars. Goodreads currently has this at 4.17. My hopes were very high for this book. People were saying this was a 5-star read. It changed their lives to read this. For me, I personally did not get that at all. This kind of felt like a book that you would read in high school and your teacher would make you draw out the hidden message or the hidden lesson in the whole book. And I didn't quite catch on to what the lesson was in this book. It was an interesting concept, but I didn't really care for it. I think I finished the book more confused than moved. Next, I kind of mentioned this during one of my other reviews, but I did read Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This is her newest release. Of course, I had to buy it from Blackwell's and I got the paperback version because I refuse to buy hardcovers. This is technically a standalone, but it's going to be part of an interconnected series. I'm not sure if we know how many books she's releasing in this series, but there definitely will be more where the characters are interconnected. This is about our female main character who meets a emotionally unavailable veterinarian. They immediately fall in love. It's one of those love at first sight types of books. However, after their first date, our female main character is moving across the country and she tells the veterinarian to forget about her. I personally gave this book 3.5 stars. Goodreads has it at a 4.19 right now. I thought this book was a good read, but personally it wasn't my favorite from Abby Jimenez. I think I like the Part of Your World series more right now. If you don't like modern day references or modern day jokes, I would not recommend this book. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about those. When I read them, I kind of cringe, but kind of laugh. I don't know. I feel like the way it played out was just not super realistic. Not saying that romance books are always realistic, but this one just kind of felt like, yes, they were going through hardships, but of course, everything always works out. And it kind of took me out of the story. That being said, though, if you like Abby Jimenez, I would definitely recommend you still read this book. I'm sure this whole series is going to be good. I'm just saying I like Part of Your World more. And lastly, I read The One by John Mars. This is technically part of a series. I believe there's 2 other books in this series. I personally will not be reading them. This is a sci-fi thriller where a simple DNA test can match you with the one person you're genetically destined to love. But of course, as this is a thriller, not everything is as it seems, and you never know who you're going to be matched to. I gave this a 4.5. Now thinking back to it, I feel like I would maybe lower it to a 4 stars. I feel like after I got done with it, I was so excited about it. I thought it was really cool, but now kind of thinking back, I probably would give it 4 stars. Goodreads currently has this at 4.1. This was my second John Mars book. I read What Lies Between Us. This book is told in 5 different point of views, which I love that in books. However, I kind of wish that the point of views would have connected a little bit more at the end. These all felt like very separate point of views and very separate stories being told. I will still say that the way John Mars set this up kept me so invested. Each chapter would end on a cliffhanger, and since all the point of views were in a loop, it made me want to read faster and get back to each character to find out what happens next. And if the one sounds familiar, you can actually see on the cover too. It's now a TV show. I personally haven't watched the show. I probably won't. I watched a trailer of it and it kind of seemed like the plot was the same and it's still the same concept, but the actual storyline seems very different than the book. So now that we went through all of the books, I want to get to the reveal of my favorite book and my least favorite book. So my least favorite book was I Who Have Never Known Women. I think you can probably tell from my review. I just didn't like it. I wouldn't recommend it to people. I wouldn't say it's the worst book I've ever read. It's just the worst book I read this month. I was honestly happy that it was a short book so that I could get done with it faster. And as for my favorite book of the month, it is The Bookseller of Dachau. Again, loved it. I can't reiterate that enough. I would recommend it to anyone. And if you've never read historical fiction, I would also recommend it to you. I feel like this would get you into historical fiction. So thanks everyone for hanging out for my April reading wrap up. I'm always looking for new book recs, so if you have any books on your TBR or any 5-star reads, please let me know. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you like these videos.